The bedroom was a sanctuary of shadows and whispers, bathed in the silver glow of a restless moon. The air thrummed with a tension so thick it felt alive, coiling around Lila and Ethan like a living thing, daring them to cross the line they'd been skirting for weeks. Her pulse was a wild drumbeat in her ears, her skin prickling with anticipation as she stood by the open window. The city's distant hum a faint echo against the storm brewing between them. The silk of her camisole clung to her curves, a soft ivory against the flush of her skin, and the cool night air kissed her bare shoulders, sending a shiver down her spine. Ethan stood in the doorway, a dark silhouette carved from desire itself. His black button-down was unbuttoned just enough to reveal the hard lines of his chest, the faint shadow of ink curling beneath the fabric. His jeans hung low, the denim stretched taut over his thighs, and his stance, casual yet predatory, made her breath catch. His eyes, those molten pools of obsidian, raked over her with a hunger that felt like a physical touch, igniting every nerve in her body. The scent of his cedarwood cologne drifted toward her, mingling with the sweet vanilla of her lotion, and the combination was intoxicating, pulling her under like a riptide. "You're staring," Lila said, her voice a sultry challenge, low and laced with a defiance she couldn't suppress. She tilted her head, letting her auburn hair cascade over one shoulder, the strands catching the moonlight like burnished copper. Her lips curved into a teasing smile, but her eyes betrayed her, wide, burning, daring him to make a move. Ethan's mouth twitched into a smirk, but there was nothing playful about the way his gaze darkened, the way his jaw tightened as if he were holding himself back by a thread. "Can you blame me?" His voice was gravel and smoke, rough with want, and it sent a jolt of heat straight to her core. He pushed off the doorframe, his movements deliberate, a panther stalking its prey. Each step closed the distance between them, and with every inch, the air grew heavier, electric. "You've been torturing me all night, Lila. That dress, hugging every goddamn curve. That laugh, like you know exactly what it does to me. And the way you looked at me, like you wanted to devour me whole." Her breath hitched, her chest rising and falling as he stopped mere inches away. The heat radiating from his body was a tangible force, wrapping around her, pulling her in. She could see the pulse hammering at the base of his throat, could feel the intensity of his restraint, and it made her bold. "Maybe I do," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of defiance and desire. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze with a fire of her own. "So what are you waiting for, Ethan? Do something about it." The words were a spark to dry tinder. Ethan's hand shot out, his fingers threading through her hair, gripping the back of her neck with a possessive strength that made her gasp. He yanked her to him, his mouth crashing against hers in a kiss that was all fire and fury. A collision of need and frustration and weeks of pent-up longing. It wasn't gentle. It was raw, desperate, a claiming that left no room for doubt. Lila kissed him back with equal ferocity, her hands fisting in his shirt, tugging him closer as she poured every ounce of her hunger into it. His tongue swept against hers, tasting of whiskey and danger, and she moaned, the sound swallowed by the heat of his mouth, her body arching into him like it had a will of its own. He backed her up, his hands roaming her body with a reverence that bordered on worship. Yet there was an edge to his touch, a hunger that made her knees weak. Her thighs hit the edge of the bed and she stumbled, but he caught her, his arm banding around her waist as he lowered her onto the silk sheets. The cool fabric was a stark contrast to the fire of his skin, and she shivered as he loomed over her, his eyes blazing with a need that mirrored her own. Fuck, Lila, he growled, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her. You have no idea what you do to me. Her hands were frantic, shoving his shirt off his shoulders, letting it fall to the floor to reveal the sculpted planes of his chest. The tattoos that snaked across his skin like a map she wanted to memorize. Show me, she breathed, her voice a plea and a challenge, her fingers tracing the hard ridges of his abdomen, feeling the way his muscles tensed under her touch. Show me, Ethan. His eyes darkened, a wicked promise in their depths as he hooked his fingers under her camisole, tugging it up and over her head in one fluid motion. The air kissed her bare skin and she felt exposed, vulnerable, but the way he looked at her, like she was a goddess, like she was everything, made her feel powerful. His hands slid up her sides, his thumbs brushing the lace of her bra, and she arched into him, craving more, craving everything. You're so goddamn beautiful, he murmured, his lips brushing her collarbone, leaving a trail of fire in their wake. He unhooked her bra with a deft flick, tossing it aside, and his mouth descended, hot and hungry on her breast. Lila gasped, her fingers tangling in his hair as he teased her with his tongue, his teeth grazing just enough to send a jolt of pleasure pain through her. His hand cupped her other breast, his thumbs circling, and she was drowning, lost in the sensation, in the way he seemed to know exactly how to unravel her. Ethan, she whimpered, her voice breaking, her hips rocking against him, seeking friction, seeking him. He lifted his head, his lips glistening, his grin pure male arrogance. Patience, sweetheart, he said, but there was no patience in his voice, only a raw, desperate edge. He slid lower, his hands hooking into her panties, dragging them down her legs with a slow, torturous deliberation that made her squirm. His lips followed, kissing the sensitive skin of her inner thigh, so close to where she ached for him that she could barely breathe. I want to taste every inch of you, he murmured, his breath hot against her skin, and she whimpered, her hands fisting in the sheets, her body trembling with anticipation. When his mouth finally found her, Lila cried out, her back arching off the bed as pleasure crashed through her like a tidal wave. He was relentless, his tongue and lips working her with a skill that was both devastating and divine. Each flick, each suck pushing her closer to the edge. Her thighs trembled, her breath came in ragged gasps, and she was lost, utterly lost in the way he consumed her, in the way he made her feel like she was the only thing that mattered. Ethan, she gasped, her voice a broken plea. Please. He didn't let up, his eyes locking on hers as he pushed her higher, higher until she shattered, her climax hitting her with a force that stole her breath, her vision, her sense of self. She was nothing but sensation, nothing but the waves of pleasure that rolled through her, leaving her trembling, clinging to him as he coaxed every last shudder from her body. But Ethan wasn't done. He crawled up her body, his lips claiming hers in a kiss that was deep, possessive, letting her taste herself on him. She moaned into it, her hands fumbling with his belt, her fingers shaking with the need to feel him, to have him. She shoved his jeans down, freeing him, and her breath caught at the sight of him. Hard, thick, so perfectly hers. Lila, he groaned, as she wrapped her hand around him, stroking him until his control frayed, his hips bucking into her touch. He grabbed her wrist, pinning it above her head, his other hand guiding himself to her entrance. Look at me, he demanded, his voice raw, desperate, and she did, her eyes locking on his, seeing the storm of emotion there, need, adoration, and something deeper that made her heart ache. In one smooth, powerful thrust, he filled her, stretching her in a way that made her gasp, her body adjusting to the delicious intrusion. It was too much, not enough, everything all at once, and she clung to him, her nails digging into his shoulders as he began to move. They found a rhythm, fierce and primal, each thrust driving them closer, deeper, a dance of bodies and souls. His hands gripped hers, angling her just right, hitting that spot inside her that made her see stars. She wrapped her legs around him, pulling him closer, her heels digging into his back as she met him thrust for thrust, her body singing with the intensity of it. "Ethan," she panted, her voice breaking, her heart pounding. I know," he growled, his lips brushing her ear, his breath hot and ragged. "Let go. I've got you." His hand slipped between them, his fingers finding that sensitive bundle of nerves. With a few deft circles, he sent her soaring again, her climax ripping through her with an intensity that left her shaking, screaming his name as wave after wave of pleasure consumed her. Ethan followed, his thrust growing erratic, his grips tightening as he buried himself deep, a low, guttural moan spilling from his lips as he came, his body shuddering against hers. They collapsed together, a tangle of limbs and sweat-slicked skin, their breaths mingling as they lay there, hearts racing, bodies spent. He rolled onto his side, pulling her against him, his lips brushing her forehead, her temple, her cheek. "You're gonna be the death of me," he murmured, his voice soft now, almost reverent, but still laced with that rough edge she loved. Lila smiled, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on his chest, feeling the steady thump of his heart beneath her touch. "Worth it, though," she teased, her voice husky, sated, and he chuckled, the sound vibrating through her. He pulled her closer, his arms a fortress around her, and in that moment, with the city lights filtering through the window and his heartbeat anchoring her, she knew this was more than passion, more than desire. This was them, raw and real, and she wouldn't trade it for anything.